Scott County, providing safe, healthy, and livable communities.
.1, and that is to receive information on Scott County delivers topic environmental services and household hazardous waste. And I see Ms. Harder is out there. Could you kick us off?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you very much for that introduction. We are here this morning with a panel of folks from our department as well as some state representatives to talk about environmental health, household hazardous waste, some of our recycling programs, and kind of a host of those things that impact our environment. What I'd like to do today is to ask the people who are facilitating to introduce themselves, who you are and what department you work in, and then we will ask the people on the panel to introduce themselves, what your role is, and then we'll jump right in. Go ahead, Carrie.
Good morning, I'm Carrie Bemet, Economic Assistant.
Hi, I'm Chris Loggy with Community Services.
Lisa Brodsky, Public Health Director.
Joan Anderson. I've been with the county for 24 years and primarily in hazardous waste.
Nick Righteous, been with the county 7 years, primarily recycling and solid waste.
Jennifer Volkman from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and I manage the overall statewide program. Household hazard.
Peter Sandhigh with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Been there 17 years, primarily doing county solid waste planning for the metro area. Richard Jones, at HHW program coordinator, been dealing with hazardous waste for nearly 20 years.
And I'm Lisa Brodsky, Environmental Services Manager. And so I know we'll be going around, but I just also want to know the other environmental side of the
Excellent, thank you. And there's another, Amanda Cotton from the state is going to be joining us remotely in a few minutes. And her role, could you just give us some information about her role, please? Oh, she is. Very good.
Amanda.
All right. Thanks. Good morning, Amanda.
Good morning. Yeah, Amanda Cotton with PTA, and I coordinate the e-waste statute, and also I've been working on other products, future products, but one maybe per se, solar panels happens to come up.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. If I could ask oh, you did it. Oh, good job. All right, Lisa Brodsky, you're going to start us off.
Sure. I have several questions, but I'll just start with kind of the easy one. On page 6, the county-wide recycling rate, I notice we are definitely, we're above the national goal, but quite a ways from the 2030 goal of 75%. And in your narrative, you mentioned that there are barriers to reaching, or at least to proper waste disposal that impact this rate. And I'm wondering, what are you doing anything, or what is the plan to assist people in helping them to eliminate the barriers to that?
Sure, so I will just quickly just to the overall about this slide, and then I'm going to defer over to Peter about what the state is doing, and then Nick, what specifically Scott County is doing. So this particular slide, what we're looking at for the Environmental Health Department is kind of an overall a big picture indicator how we're doing in many different programs, solid waste, hazardous waste, and HHW program. We think there's a direct and indirect. How are we doing in education and outreach and inspections? Overall, how we're doing with those will impact our recycling rate. Recycling rate kind of equates to public knowledge and understanding of how to, what to do, how to do it, and then they're doing it correctly, so that amount is increasing as we're doing a better job with outreach and inspection. So that's kind of like, this is our big one main to kind of guide us how we're doing in all of our different programs. But then as it notes, and as you stated, it has some bigger specific implications to our department because we have some goals that we have to reach. So I'm going to turn it over to Peter to talk about, the legislature and these goals and what the state is doing. And then Nick, if you want to talk about what the specific items we do.
Sure. Yeah, so the little bit of the history behind the goal in Minnesota is that the metro area did for a long time have a 50% goal that was the same as the federal goal. The counties had met that goal in the metro area and then had stagnated in terms of progress. And the legislature saw that there was an opportunity to encourage even additional diversion, acknowledging the fact that the metro counties here are among the leaders in the country. So I want to make sure that I point that out. But we also saw more opportunity in the waste stream that could be achieved. So the legislature set a 75% goal for recycling in the metro area by 2030. And that goal was put into place roughly 10 years ago. So that is where that originated from. The state, then, my role is to implement what the legislature puts into statute, and we have been developing our region-wide plan for helping the counties achieve those goals. And there's a lot of things that we have in there. I will point out that organics management, composting, counts toward that 75% goal, and it is 40% of our existing garbage stream. So when we look at the amount of waste discarded, 40% of that is organic material that could be recovered, and that is the low-hanging fruit to help us get toward that 75% goal. Nick, do you want to talk about the county level?
Yeah, and Chris, what was your question, or Lisa, excuse me, what did you'd asked about?
The barriers. You had mentioned in the narrative that there were barriers.
Okay.
For people to reach that goal. Are you doing anything to help them reduce those barriers?
Yeah, I think with our education and outreach programs, we're doing a lot of education at at the schools, with our community, getting messages out about, what's recyclable, working with our partners to provide outreach opportunities, like I said, at schools, community events, county fair, things like that. Still rely on the scene a lot to get our recycling education message out there. And then I think, lately we've been looking at social media, technology to help, work through those barriers where we've kind of been stagnant or like Peter said, we've reached that 50% and now we need to start ramping up to get to that 75%. So using partners with technology, things like that.
So we've so Nick was talking about our partners. We have different kinds of partners. We've got, so helping us with these barriers, right? We've reached out to partners to help us with these barriers. And there's different kinds of partners. So we've got our partners that are our consultants that we bring in. So one of the barriers we have is getting into businesses, right? How do we do that? Because the county knocks on the door. That doesn't mean the business wants us in there, right? Because we're trying to educate, not enforce. So we use Minnesota WasteWise, which is a nonprofit organization that will go into a business that can relate to what a business would be interested in to start this recycle. So there's a financial incentive to recycle, right? So they try to work with the business and get them to better understand, like, this is why you would want to do it. And coming from WasteWise instead of the county, sometimes that's helpful, and we move in that right direction, bringing in the right people. Sometimes that makes a difference. So we use Klein Theater with schools, and we use DEMCON, and we use some others. So we're kind of in the science and math nature. We're not necessarily the best great educators. We're entertainers to make kids enjoy it and be fun for them. So we sometimes get some help from others to do that, and that message really seems to stick with them. So we kind of recognize what the barriers are, how to do the right kind of messaging, who's the right person to be getting the message out. We take all of that into consideration. And then some other partners that we look to that have been very helpful in Scott County would be DEMCON, the SMSC ORF, and then our cities. So DEMCON and the ORF are also really big advocates for education. And they will, DEMCON has green grades where they're going out to schools, also trying to, like, that barrier of who's the right person. to educate. In that, in some cases, that is DEMCON, because you're getting it straight from the business how to do the recycling. So we kind of tap into that. And then the ORF gives tours, so for the organics facility, so people really understand how it's done. And then our cities are really great partners because we work with them on our cleanup days. So there's education, and then there's also accessibility. Our residents in the cities really like that cleanup day, talking about, you know, how to do it, making it easy for them. That's another way we kind of work with a barrier, is to bring that disposal to them once a year. They like that. And then, of course, our HHW is another way we deal with a barrier of accessibility, is having that not just a one-time cleanup event for your HHW. You know, we provide that 4 days a week.
So on page 8, that's a look at the metro-wide recycling rates. And if you look at those first-tier suburb counties, their performance is all relatively the same. I'm wondering if there is this like an every county figure it out kind of project, or are there regional approaches to improving recycling rates?
I'd be happy to take that first, since I'm kind of the regional representative, I guess.
Sure.
I get a good view of the whole system. First of all, I think the thing I want to point out on this graph is that the Hennepin and Ramsey County rates are probably artificially low because of reporting issues. They have the highest percentage of businesses, so they don't survey each individual business to identify how much recycling is taking place at those businesses. And we know that there's a lot happening in that private sector, but they're not required to report. So those two counties, because of the huge percentage of businesses in their counties, I think have a depressed recycling rate. It's not necessarily indicative of a poor program. But yes, I think overall there are regional objectives and partnerships. One that I'd like to point out here is that there's a lot of coordination with Dakota County and Carver County on local jurisdictional programs that help facilitate things. Region-wide, Jennifer's probably better to talk about this, but there's reciprocity in the HHW programs. So if me living in Ramsey County happens to go to Hennepin County because their facility is more convenient, Ramsey County then reimburses Hennepin County for that use of that facility. And from an education standpoint, county staff work together, try to develop consistent messages. I think Nick could give you a little more detail on that specific initiative that's upcoming. But yeah, I think there's a lot of good coordination happening, and that's one of the things that there's a draft plan coming out from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency that's available for review now. It's out for public comment. We do encourage anybody to review it right now. It's open for public comment until mid-September. Any comments we receive are definitely appreciated to help us improve that plan. But one of the big things that we push for in the draft plan is greater regional collaboration and system-wide regional consistency, because in order to be successful with recycling, having a consistent message, similar themes, what can be recycled in each jurisdiction, similar structures in terms of fees and charges, all of that helps the system operate more smoothly and more efficiently.
Thank you.
Hey, can I ask quick, what do you think that number would be in Hennepin and Ramsey County if they did have to do the reporting you were talking about?
Honestly, I think it would probably be fairly close.
Oh, they'd be,
Yeah,
okay.
but the lack of private business reporting in those counties is pretty significant, I would think. It's a guess, I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
But Nick, what were you saying private business is for Scott?
If I look at the data that just the haulers report to the state, we're at about 35%. So that other 20% that I'm getting is going out to Walmart and big box stores and businesses like Toro and things like that in the county that are recycling and maybe not sending it with a recycling hauler. So then I can count that towards our recycling rate.
Nick, could you just take a second? How do you get to our recycling rate? And then could you, to one of the questions, just the different meetings that you go to with the other counties and then the rec committee?
Sure. You know, the county, like Peter said, you know, we collaborate quite a bit with our other metro county partners. We have different requirements, Peter, is that correct, for our recycling rate than the rural counties or outstate counties. So as the 7 metro counties would get together, we have a regional hauler licensing program that we work together on. So all of our haulers license under one agreement, makes it easier for haulers, less fees for them. As far as getting, we have a recycling education committee that pretty much all of the state counties are involved in currently to come up with consistent messaging for recycling. We have currently they've developed a guide that any county can go online and get and have similar messaging for recycling, trying to match colors, bin labeling, things like that to help make it easier for residents to recycle properly.
So at the end of our time this morning, we're going to do a brief demonstration on a technology innovation. So I wonder if I'll ask for one additional question about recycling from the facilitators. Otherwise, can we move on to the other topic areas, because we'll come back to recycling at the end. Do you have any last questions about recycling right now? Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll jump in. On page 3, number 3, when we were talking about, it must be affordable to encourage use and prevent illegal disposal, you go into a little bit of detail about kind of the fee structure, but I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about it. Is that like an annual fee that's rolled into property taxes? Like, kind of how does that work? And then if you could talk a little bit about, it seems that there is no fee for commercial property. Sounds like a suggestion to look at the Carver-Sibley model is being suggested. So could you talk a little bit about maybe why we don't have that?
Sure. So I'll go into the fees a little bit, and then I'll turn it over to Richard about what people may comment when they drop off at our facility. So the metro counties, we all have similar but different methods on how we collect funds or revenue for our household hazardous waste facilities. And we basically would just kind of do a comparison, like, again, of just the metro area, although there are HHWs in greater Minnesota. But in the metro, counties have either chose to either collect the fee through solid waste haulers, and then the solid waste hauler would then somehow that money is then transferred back over to the county, and it's done like by a percent, like on your garbage bill. And then some counties, with Scott, Anoka, and Carver, we do a property assessment. And Anoka and Carver do residential and commercial, and Scott just does residential. So I put that in there because we should consider assessing commercial, something that we should look to doing, because there's a big user out at our HHWs that we haven't paid much attention. Well, we do pay much. We don't talk much about them, and that's businesses. And I think today you'll hear, as we keep going, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the business use at our HHWs. We usually in the past have just kind of focused on our residents, but that isn't the case anymore. Our businesses are now looking to the HHW to help them dispose of their waste, because businesses generate waste just like a residence. They have light bulbs, they have cleaners, some of them have yards that they're maintaining, so they have waste too. So I think a commercial fee like Carver and Anoka and Sibley is something that we should take a look at. Scott County, we really believe that we want to be keep the fee reasonable, because we have to stay affordable, right? People want to dispose of their waste correctly, but there's some things that if it's a hurdle for them, then they might choose to dispose of it improperly. And those two things are affordability and convenience. We have to remember we have to keep it convenient or affordable, or they are going to come up with some other way of managing this waste. So Richard, I think you probably hear the most from people, other than, I know when they show up, they're always usually very thankful, but we do have a fee, and it's affordable fee. We have another fee. It's on, we call it like a fee at the door. So when you come to drop off your TV or appliance, we have a fee for that. Maybe you want to speak to like what people have said of their experience when they drop off. A lot of them think it's free and they're excited.
Yes. So we do have a fee for e-waste. We have a $10 fee for e-waste and appliances. But like Kate said, a lot of folks, think like everything's free when they drop stuff off, but everything gets paid for by the, special assessment. Do you want me to go into the businesses side of it?
Sure.
Sue? Okay. We do have a lot of businesses showing up, and the frustration we have right now is a lot of those businesses don't realize that there's a fee for business waste, and they try and drop it off during when we're open, during our household collection, or they don't know the proper procedure for dropping off business waste. That's definitely a challenge for us.
So they try to come in as a resident.
As a resident, yeah.
In their business. So the residents are now kind of picking up the cost for businesses that are trying to come in. And we don't want to discourage businesses to not do that, right? We want the business to manage their waste properly. We don't want to turn them away. So that's why we're like trying to make sure that we're being fair to our residents on the cost and picking up that cost. And then Jennifer, we were talking about, this isn't just a Scott County issue.
Sure. There's a few things. When COVID hit, the haz waste industry was disrupted, and there were a lot of shortages on material and that type of thing. And one of our, thank you, Clean Harbors, who's very large and serving generators in Minnesota, established a $5,000 minimum. They wouldn't come to a site unless they had that much waste. And so there's even getting to be a little bit of a strain on the contractors, but Clean Harbors also picked up 3M, and that was their priority. But so the waste costs aren't going to go down for industry. I think they are tough, but if you think about my experience when I was inspecting is the small companies need the most help. So for them to take in a generator, it's a lot. It is very expensive, and typically their minimum is around $500-600, maybe a little bit more, maybe up to $1,000. So it's significantly different than what household can offer, because you have the facility, you have hopefully the staff, and that reasonable disposal cost means it's everything. Our programs but our programs are not increasing in the number of VSQGs using the facility at a very significant rate. And what I've heard from some programs, another Metro program, is they believe about 20% of what they're taking in now is from businesses who are not paying, and then they're also not licensed. So they're, I don't think that HHW facilities and counties should be the only answer to VSQGs, but right now it's really kind of the way it is. And it's something that I'd like to work on with the agency, but it ends up involving all the fees. It involves a lot to make changes there. So it's definitely a problem, and it's a burden for household programs. They are all taking in business waste, and it looks the same. They'll bring paint, they'll bring thinners, batteries, that type of thing. So.
And
can we go to page 14 for a minute? And I wonder if a couple of things. In most of the data slides, it looks like the amount of waste that we're collecting at the HHW hasn't really rebounded to that pre-COVID level. So is that how you read the data as well?
Actually, I can make a comment on that. So far this year, according to the data we've collected, it looks like this year is going to be definitely the amount of waste we're taking is pre-COVID levels. It's on the track to be one of the busiest years so far this year. Page 14 does indicate, though, that it's definitely a seasonality as far as collection of wastes. We usually have, spring is pretty busy. We have a little bit of summer lull, and then fall collection gets busy again. And on that graph also, it does show the COVID years. Also shows the year right after COVID, where we had some appointments, and it's still a little slower. And then also our incident with our fire suppression system is on that graph as well for 2021 or 2022, my mistake. So, but yeah, it definitely looks like this year is on the way to be pretty busy.
Okay, thank you.
That's consistent statewide.
It is, okay. Good.
I was just going to add, we anticipated that. We knew that from COVID, we would have a recovery time, and that with the fire, we would have a recovery time. But watching the other HHWs, Richard and Jennifer meeting and talking and getting together, knowing what was happening around the metro area, we knew it wasn't, it was just a matter of time until we recovered when we back.
Okay.
For HHWs, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Facilities are all they're all at capacity and a little bit above. That's what we're seeing statewide because the program just keeps getting bigger.
I have a question about the data on page 19 and 20 about your hazardous waste generators and inspections. And if I'm reading the data correctly, it looks like you used to inspect about half of the generators each year. And in the past few years, it's actually been less than 10%. And I'm wondering, a couple questions about that. What's your target goal? Like, what is your goal? How do you identify which ones you're going to look at? And what are the public health implications if they aren't inspected as frequently? And the other part of that question is looking at page 20, it looks like, I'll just use 2022 as an example. 18% had some significant violations. And if you can maybe speak about what the public health implications are for those violations. That was 18% of the 46 that you were able to inspect. What about the other 481? And should we have concerns?
Okay.
Okay.
Do we have concerns about?
I got it.
Okay.
We can do this. Okay, so I'm going to have Joan help with the what our goal for inspection frequency is, and then what she can then speak to what she's seeing for violations and implications for public health. And then also, Joan, when I turn it over to you, if you could also then kind of swing back to the conversation we were having about VSQGs, which are, in case everyone knows, a VSQG is a very small quantity generator. It's maybe give an example of a VSQG business so people know who's a VSQG.
You could have anything from like your auto body shop, mechanic, to your local medical facility. There really is a wide range in what type of business that is. So our businesses are split up into different categories by how much waste they generate. And so our target is for facilities to be out there at least once a year, large quantity and small quantity generators every 1 to 2 years, very small quantity generators every 3 to 5, and then minimals every 5 to 7. And so, so those goals are where we want to be. Especially during COVID, when for a period of time we weren't able to be out inspecting, we definitely saw an increase in dumping overall, both household and business, an increase in complaints coming from both businesses and households. And also, it's all kind of circular. So then we're also seeing when we get back out to businesses, a general increase in violations. And of course, a lot of things with businesses changed during COVID. And so some of the, when we're looking at significant violations, a lot of what we're looking at are we seeing waste being improperly disposed? Are we seeing it being disposed of on the ground or into the sewer where it shouldn't be going? And so those are the significant ones that are listed in this report. And so definitely it's circular. If you're not out there as much, the longer time between inspections, the more violations you see and the more significant violations you see.
So then is there a feedback loop? Like is there a corrective action plan or something, or how will those 18% of those inspections that didn't pass be resolved?
So they're given a timeline to correct those violations, and then we work with them to make sure those are corrected. And then, of course, if for whatever reason they're choosing not to correct it, it would move to enforcement.
Okay.
I would say most businesses want to do the right thing. They just don't know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. And so a lot of our inspection is about education. They don't know they're mismanaging a waste incorrectly, and so therefore that's when it ends up going into the garbage or going into the sewer. And so a lot of what we do out there is not just the violation side, but also helping them figure out what they should be looking at and how they should manage things overall. And so, again, if we're not out there and not having a presence and helping them to figure that out, it just creates difficulty on both sides, both for the business and then also for public health. Then you have contamination, water, land, air. So it just kind of keeps moving.
I have a question on page 17 about the septics. I know that there's a program that's kind of a revolving fund from the state, which enables us to give no to low income loans to people to help with replacement of septics and wells. I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that program, who's eligible and how it has helped with compliance in Scott County.
Sure. So I'm just going to speak to it really quick, and then I'm actually going to turn it over to Mary. So it has been a successful program. It does help people who have a failing septic system come into compliance. And then Mary, how do you know off the top of your head how many loans or grants since we started, or a ballpark you do each year?
Each year it varies, and it depends on how much money is turned back. So it's a revolving fund. So when we first started in 2014 and 2015, we probably had 30 loans. So those are finally getting paid back, and then we can loan the money back out. So last year, I believe we had 2 loans and a couple grants just because we didn't have the funds, and depending on when people install their septic systems. So we have people signed up to use the money, and just we're waiting for them to install it. We've helped quite a few people over the years, probably close to 50 residents so far for the loan program. And then the grant program, probably around 20, I would say. But those are for low income households, so those are a little harder to find sometimes.
So it is a program, it's been successful. I think residents are very happy that Scott County, at first we were going to just test it out, but it was a success. So the residents like it and use it. And the reason the septic slide is in there with a lot of slides on solid waste and hazardous waste is because the environmentalists work in all the different programs. And so one of the things that we have is a demand on, I'll call it our workforce, at about the same time. So septic systems are installed from late spring to winter, and that's that peak time when the ground is thaw and dry. So Mary and Dave, many are working on the septic program at the same time as it's the peak season for our HHW is from late spring to kind of early winter. And so we have this demand from these 2 programs that we need to get staff out in these areas and helping. And so a lot of times those at the HHW might have a off the chart record day, right, where they're at 200 cars there. They're getting to to a point where they can't handle the number that cars that are coming in. So then they will call for their backup. They're going to call for the other environmentalists that are maybe out working on septic systems to come in and reinforce them. And then the folks that work at the HHW can then also help them out if they need time off to do something. Someone from the HHW can then go and cover a septic inspection. So those are kind of the two, like, I'll call them the powerhouse programs that have the most demand at the same time. And what that does is it does take a little bit of time from us to go out and do those solid waste and hazardous waste inspections, which when you get to those slides, one of the questions might be, why are the number of inspections low? And that's simply because these two programs, the septic and the HHW, are demanding of our time. We have to address that kind of triage, where to go, and those are the two we have to address that day.
And so you're splitting, or you're exchanging staff to meet whichever program demand is prioritized.
Demand, weekly, yeah.
Okay.
Weekly demand, yep.
So then, can we look again at page 14? Because I think that the write-up talked about this data, like in reference to some worker safety issue, and I'm wondering if we could just talk about that. I think, Richard, you were instrumental in creating this data, so.
Yeah, and actually, for worker safety, there was another slide I kind of want to point out.
Sure.
Just bear with me 1 second. Oh, right behind. Actually, page 15. Because, yes, so we were, got to a point where we're trying to come up with an idea of when to, either add staff or when to open more hours. So we're trying to think of numbers and ways of doing it. So I end up coming up with this number, which is cars helped per hour per employee. And on a really busy day, it ended up being, the number it was over 10. So it's like, well, that's a good indication then, like 10 is our max number. We can't really go above that because, and like I said, employee safety comes an issue. Safety at the facility, people bringing waste and everything else. So that's kind of what we came up with, was that number. But
could you quickly explain when the car comes to the facility, for those that haven't been to the facility, how that happens? What happens once the car gets there?
Yes.
Like the unpacking, the sorting, and how you...
Yeah, so if anyone who hasn't been to the facility, we have a line, and a lane that goes up to the main gate. We have a check-in station there. We'll check in, who's there, and look at license, whether in county, out of county, if it's a reciprocal use county. We'll come out with some carts for them to unload. All the people, everyone has to unload their own vehicle. Those carts would go inside, and we pretty much have a big loop where we go around and unload all the waste. And especially when we're busy, it can get a lot of carts backed up in that one spot. We have to keep up with lap packing. People can bring in like a trailer full of waste, or it could be TVs. So we have a lot of different diverse wastes, and depending what it is, there's different spots for it. So keeping that cars help per hour per employee number less than 10 is kind of what we're looking at to do.
Are we turning people away? Like, do people,
no,
because we're too busy, or
no,
because we don't have space?
No,
or?
We never turn anyone away. No. I mean, they may have to wait in line a little bit longer until we catch up, but we never turn anyone away.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Richard does a great job of making that sound really easy. Like it just comes in and then we just put it where it goes. But they're using, this team has a lot of experience in these chemicals. I mean, there are thousands of different chemicals, and they don't come on the front of the package. I am flammable, I am explosive. They don't nicely tell you where to put them. So that team out there with the experience that they have, they are moving really fast and identifying things with just very little to go off of. So they do have to kind of interview the person who's dropping off what it is, because they get a lot of things in the wrong container. A milk jug does not have milk in it. And so they are doing a lot of screening, testing, and then unknowns go into the back into our flam room. So they're always thinking of safety first, but they're moving at a very quick rate and making it sound very simple, and it's actually, it's mentally very tough on them at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, even today, after nearly 20 years of working with hazardous materials, I'm still seeing new stuff that comes through I've never seen before. The one thing we do, though, if someone comes in with a large quantity of material, we'll ask them, like, is there anything in here you don't know what it is there any unknowns or anything like that? And that way we can go through it with them and kind of figure out what it is. With some basic knowledge of what they have, they might be able to give us some indication of what that material is.
Okay.
Question about, and I don't see a chart on it, but have you seen an increase in improperly disposed hazardous, like household hazardous waste on people's properties that you're getting calls on? And are you utilizing the public health nuisance ordinance, and has that helped? Or is there any gaps?
Yeah, and I'll probably have Nick add to this if there's anything you'd like to. I would say in 2020, people started cleaning their homes. And at the same time, our disposable facilities started closing down.
Mm-hmm.
So
All of them.
It really, there was a collision of waste problem. There was many people who needed to outlet, and there was no outlet for them. And so in 2020, maybe a little bit into 21, we were getting calls all the time. There was random stuff on all kinds of corners. I'd say Nick and Richard were out looking for some of the most ridiculous things. And that's probably been alleviated a bit. Nick was tracking for a while.
And we still are.
Okay, we're tracking. Can you speak to some of, 2020 to 2022, what you're finding? I know you and Lisa are certainly seeing each other a lot more in public health nuisances.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like Kate said, during COVID, we saw a lot more illegal dumping. We've always had illegal dumping, and I don't think we'll ever alleviate it completely, but people looking for inexpensive outlets, or not, maybe not wanting to pay, leaving it on the corner in a ditch somewhere. I will say, I think Richards has a pretty good program with our Public Works Department where they can bring waste in to the HHW and contact him if they find it on the road for properly, to make sure it's properly disposed of, as well as we have a, program with our cities and townships where they can bring, if they find waste in their road right away, they'll bring it into the HHW for proper disposal. So I think we've got some good programs for that. And we do have some tracking so we can kind of see what the trends are year over year.
So, and I want to add that in 2020, there was a lot of cleaning of homes that happened, and these facilities were shutting down, and now they're open. I think we are seeing a little bit more. I don't know if we tracked it, but I'm hearing a lot more of, there's other things that since COVID that have been happening to residents, financial stress on them, mental stress on them, that we're starting to see more. So now COVID has passed, we're starting to recover, but we're still seeing a bit of an increase of public health nuisances of solid waste outside. And when we're talking about them, we are now having to talk about some other factors that we need to consider in helping that resident clean up. So I wouldn't call that like an illegal disposal, because they're not disposing it. They don't know what to do. They've come into some financial or something else is going on in the home, and we're having to work with them on cleanup. And that's not a one-day thing, and it's not we're going to write you a violation, because that's not going to change anything for them. And we are seeing more than we have pre-COVID. I don't know the exact number, though.
So I wonder, this group, from a county perspective, you're kind of in a unique position because we're going to end this conversation, and then we're going to move to a board workshop where we're going to talk about this more. And so just in the interest of using everyone's expertise in the best way, I wonder if we could look at page 16. And really one of the biggest things on our horizon in Scott County is this plan or potential plan for the sharing of a resource with Dakota County and the household hazardous waste. And so in the few minutes that we have left, I was hoping that somebody could just give some, like, what are the kinds of things coming in our immediate future that we should be paying attention to make good decisions around this shared facility?
I'm actually gonna,
Can I jump in?
yeah, actually, I'm actually gonna share that with Peter and Jennifer. If you could comment, you're aware of our regional facility, if you have any.
Yeah. This isn't necessarily specific to HHW, what I'm going to say, so I'll let Jennifer talk about that
It's a
specifically.
multi-use facility.
Yeah. One of the big things we're calling for in our regional plan that I talked about earlier is system resiliency. And, you know, we're talking about a lot of things that happened recently, COVID, but there are other issues that cause facility outages. And when we have a facility shut down, whether privately or publicly owned, it results in illegal disposal and the least wanted outcome. And so we are calling for ways to anticipate what some of those outages may be so that we can plan for and properly mitigate the risk associated with things. And what I want to call out is lithium ion batteries are a significant risk to not just HHW infrastructure, as you know, but also solid waste facilities, because every one of us in this room has a battery sitting in our pocket probably right now with our cell phones. And one of those ends up in the trash, gets run over by a compactor, and boom, you have a fire at that facility. So that's an example of a big risk that we know exists out there that we all need to plan for as a solid waste industry to make sure that our infrastructure isn't put at risk and we end up with unintended consequences from a fire or some other problem. We also know we're seeing more severe storms, so that also results in more disposal of waste from construction debris. So those are things that we need to plan for and continue to think about going forward. Not just Scott County, but everybody.
Thank you. You talked about lithium batteries. That's my thing.
I know, I'm sorry. It affects solid waste.
It does. It's really, you know, the household programs are probably the bomb squad's best customer, and several times a year, every year, sometimes up to 20, but it's the batteries that they're afraid of. They swell up during the night. Most of what we get in is damaged because it doesn't work anymore. And it's a real risk. I'm working on a grant for more safety equipment statewide to manage batteries, because right now the household program is managing the majority. I think I didn't separate out, but 6 tons of batteries, and that's ever increasing. And typically it's tough if you operate for a full day and then that's the end of your day to do all the taping and sorting that need to be done to make sure they're safe. So it's been a real challenge to labor. It's probably the most labor intensive stream that they manage. So it definitely is having an impact. That's obviously not going to slow down. And the other thing I want to comment on is we've also had interest from the private haulers in what are we going to do with batteries. And it is my opinion that they need to be helping out. These public programs statewide have been cleaning up the waste stream for everybody, not just the county, but for the private haulers, and there's zero contribution. And I think it's time we need to consider that as another source, because the budgets can't just continue to increase and increase with this program. And batteries are an example of something that's very expensive. And even if all of the disposal is covered, it's so labor intensive, and we don't currently have labor coverage right now through our EPR programs. But yeah, that's a big deal. Did I have something? Those are probably the main things.
All right, then I wonder if it makes sense to pause here, because we are going to move to a workshop setting in a few minutes. Can we do the demonstration on Better Bin? Can we talk
Absolutely.
about what that is and what the purpose is?
Yeah, I think Nick, so all of you should have a cue card. Okay, so while Nick's going up there, on this, so one of the issues that we have with recycling, that folks have said to us is they don't, they want to, but they don't know how. Is it recyclable? Is it not? Is it trash? How do I do it? We've invested in Better Bin, which Nick will pull up. It is an app that you can put on your phone. You scan the item, and it will tell you how to recycle it, if it is a recyclable item or if it should go in the trash. And he's getting that stuff. So you would upload the app, and you put in your information, and now you are basically talking to your local hauler. In our case, if you live, is all Scott County is DEMCON, right? Not. Okay, I'll let you speak to the rest of this part about it.
So I've got my phone here, and so like Kate said, we've got an app, Better Bin, that we're working with this year, and it's pretty easy. This is just how someone could sign up. Scan the QR code, it will take you to this page. You'll pick the community that you live in, so Minnesota, Scott County, and then it has every kind of hauler and area where that you might belong to. So I live in Belle Plaine Township, and I have Laker Sanitation, so I'm just going to select them. And now this page has some general information about recycling, about our household hazardous waste facility, organics, things like that. But let's say I don't know if an item's recyclable in my home recycling cart. So we've done all the work on the back end to see if the hauler takes an item and if that item is recyclable at DEMCON or whichever MRF my hauler uses. So in my case, my hauler uses DEMCON. So we've talked to DEMCON, and then we can scan these items to see if it's recyclable. So here we've got a paper box. We're pretty sure it's recyclable. And it says partially recyclable. So the paperboard box or packaging is acceptable. The inner bags on the inner bags or pouches for the snacks are not recyclable. So pretty easy to use. And like I said, it's using information exactly or accurate to your hauler and where it goes. So try another one here. They have a little bit of, and then this one says trash. So just a new technology app we can use. It's relatively inexpensive. So if residents don't know if things are recyclable, they can sign up for it, use it free of charge, and
Yeah, thank you. That's good information.
I just did this.
Yes?
My recycle compost community.
we might have to get a different QR code.
No, I had that happen to me too. I had to go further. I said, okay, sure, I'm New Prague, whatever. And then I went in there, and then you can go under your settings, and you can, it's making an assumption right now. And then what I did is I went in to my settings and I corrected it to Shakopee, where I live. So it kind of at first makes an assumption of where you are, and then you can go in and correct it.
Is there somebody who could assist with that after?
Yeah, because I had the same thing. So
We did have
I'd be
a
more than
test.
happy to help.
There was a test QR code out there that went to New Prague, so we might have the wrong QR code,
Yeah,
but we can make sure we got the right one for you guys.
Mr. Chairman, in the interest of time and scheduling this morning, I think we're going to pause after that and get back to you.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any questions, or Commissioner Beer?
perfect opportunity to talk a little trash. Is there a, this is helpful, is there a AI technology when I'm taking my tray and I've got 18 different bins and then my fork goes here, where it just sucks it in all those different things, so I don't know where my foil goes, where the cup goes, I know that's before it gets to you guys. The real question is this. So we look at the, our little chart, what's best, reduce, I don't know where the cameras, but we have all that, reduce all the way down to landfill being the least preferred. Is there, as we look around the corner, any disruptive technology, I'm just figuratively looking there, that is gonna change the way we compost, the way we throw things away, the way that we handle our trash, beyond just what we've been doing? We got couple people from the States, so maybe they got some really awesome tricks that we don't know about yet. Stuff that really works besides sending it to the moon, or blue bag maybe? Or...
Yeah, I think blue bag is a good example, Nick. That's the industry standard term for it, but it's basically a durable compostable bag that makes collection of our curbside organics more efficient and easier. And so the idea is that you can put that compostable bag into your garbage bin, and then it gets sorted out at the facility when it arrives. So the resident doesn't have two carts, you're not running extra trucks. From a cost and efficiency standpoint, it works quite well. And then the bag holds up, and they pull it at the tipping floor because it's a different color. And in some cases, Ramsey and Washington County are planning to do this with their facility. Because they designate all waste in the counties to go through that facility. And they do have AI sorters that grab the bags and pull them off the line. So it's getting there, and then that pulls that organic right out of the waste. But it is incumbent upon the resident to put it in that bag in the first place. But it's good technology that's resulting in clean material at compost facilities.
Oh, but as far as landfills, I mean, that's, I always look at the waste to energy being, down the scale a little bit. Is there anything that makes that more efficient?
And that's the one I wanted to ask about too. Why is that so low? I mean, we sit in conversations with Hennepin County, of course, all the time on the HERC and the benefits, and
right
now that's under the gun evidently, but it would seem that conversion would be a good thing.
And hopefully getting better. So I just keep wondering, there's gotta be something around the corner.
Sure, with regards to waste energy and landfilling?
Or just another alternative to just jamming it in the dirt.
Sure. There are a couple facilities, and one is going to be located here, I understand, that you may have heard about, is DEMCON will be constructing an anaerobic digestion facility. It's still relatively new technology and a little bit unknown, but that would be a great opportunity to handle more organic material, capture the methane off of that because it's in a closed vessel. So that's also on the horizon here. How long that's going to take to develop is a little uncertain at this point.
Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, Jody. Commissioner Brennan. Yeah.
I do have a question. There's a lot of conversations about the recycling and going to the facility, and then there's no place for those facilities to sell it as a commodity. So it changed the complexion of recycling, and I can't convince my husband personally that he should be recycling, and we have that conversation very often. So is that something that's changing? Can I still recycle what I recycle? And I know I have the app here, but can I be assured that when something gets to the recycling facility that it's actually being recycled?
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner. That's an excellent question and an important one. State law, Minnesota's unique, and then we have a law that dictates that anything collected for recycling has to go to an appropriate recycling facility. And the MPCA does follow up on any complaints where we hear of recyclable material being illegally disposed of. So that's the first part of that question. The second part is that the state of Minnesota has also done a really good job on what's called market development, which is making sure that we have strong local markets of manufacturing companies that want to manufacture new material out of that material, that feedstock, if you will, that we're putting in our curbside bins. Because we all think of recycling. I think the average resident thinks of recycling as put it in a separate bin and it goes away. Those of us in the industry think of it as it doesn't actually happen until there's a company that wants to make something out of that material. And that's a really important piece of that loop, and the economics need to work. So making sure that the material is clean, high value, and consistent material is so important to ensure that those facilities and those manufacturing companies can remain viable going forward. So there's a lot that if I was king for a day, I would change in terms of the way we package material to make sure that we are using more consistent, like plastics drive me crazy, and they probably drive all of you crazy because we have 7 numbers, but there's really an infinite number of blends of plastic. If we just had one plastic that we used that was standardized, boy, you could collect it all and you could make a lot of good material out of it and perpetually recycle it. Unfortunately, that's not where we are. So it's an ongoing challenge, and things get more complex and constantly change. So we have to adapt to that, of course.
And the public wants what they want.
That's
they
true.
Want a certain color computer. They don't want them to all look like, remember how when they first came out, they were all the same colors, the same plastic. So you're working with that, the desire from the consumer to have everything. But it follows economics.
I went on the city of Savage's site to see what they said about the recycling. And here's what they say. They say it's by appointment only, and the reuse room is closed until further notice.
The city of Savage site says?
That's the
I'm sorry.
site he's on.
I went on the Savage website just to see what it said about recycling in the county, and it says the hazardous waste facility is by appointment only, and the reuse room is closed until further notice.
No, that is not correct. We'll have to reach out
So
to
I
the
guess
city
I
of
would,
Savage.
I guess I would truth test all the partners' websites.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Brennan.
I do have one more comment. I really appreciate the support that the Scott County has given to the cleanup days to the cities. I know that Shakopee used to have just one day, and now they do 2 because it was so popular. And we talked about during COVID, that was the only resource for people to bring their stuff to the recycling. So, I mean, we had a line through Shakopee that one time. So. I appreciate the work that Scott County is doing to offer that to the cities and to the townships.
Yeah, thanks. Just one thing that I'm really impressed on with your area is how you cross-train, how you all are so knowledgeable about these different areas. I think it's just a great model. I want to comment a little bit on resident concerns about convenience, because I've followed up on a lot of those, and I get a lot of those. And actually, almost every single one has been talking about taking things that really aren't recyclable or hazardous. And so I think we have to be careful when we're looking at citizen comments and things and make sure, because that's just not going to be our role to dispose of people's garbage for them. And so I think we need to consider that often because, like I said, every single one. And then the other thing that I think we're doing a better job of following up on is, you know, with the townships, and we hear the illegal dumping so much, but much, and I would venture to say most of the legal dumping is not, again, hazardous or recyclable. So again, I think we need to make sure we're digging down into that before we change policies, hours, spending, even to make sure that we're not assuming that everybody understands hazardous or recyclable. So, but thank you.
Okay. I think that concludes it. Thank you very much, everybody.